So just when you thought you couldn't get enough of dimensional analysis, here's another example coming your way. Now, the keys to all dimensional analysis problems, and I've taken the liberty of writing the steps here on the right side, is first to get all your conversion factors, and I've sort of started to set that up over here. Then you're going to make a grid, and in that grid, you're going to make sure during each step to cancel out the units that you don't want with those conversion factors, and make sure you're left with the unit that you do want. And then finally, you solve the problem just by multiplying and or dividing. So, here we have our problem. Mr. Bryant is running 2.00 marathons in May 2011. And yes, it is 2.00 marathons. Calculate the number of centimeters he will cover in those races. So, here we go. Now, the nice thing about some of these dimensional analysis problems that you'll be given is that often you will be given some of the conversion factors. And in this case, I would probably have to tell you, since everyone asks me all the time, that one marathon, I should fix that, one marathon is equal to 26.2 miles. Then, the next thing we need to know is that 1 mile, since we're dealing with the metric system here, and, well, we don't think in the metric system very well, 1 mile is equal to 1.609 kilometers. Now, in this particular example, that's all I give you. Now, you may need to figure out more conversion factors to get you there, because it looks like with the conversion factors that you're given in this case, you'll only be able to get your answer in kilometers, and that's not what you want. You want centimeters. So, what I would do, and some of you will be able to do this directly, others may have to take it in 2 steps. I'm going to go ahead and do it in 2 steps, because we know about the relationship between kilometers and meters. Namely, we know that there are 1,000 meters in 1 kilometer. So I'm going to use that as my next conversion factor. Now, the next conversion factor will probably be the one that gets us to centimeters. And in fact, we can pull that off pretty easily. We know that there are 100 centimeters in 1 meter. So it looks like with what we have up here, we should be able to solve the problem. Again, there's a lot of writing, there's a lot of setup work involved, but if you set it up and write out all your conversion factors, that does make your life a whole lot easier. So, our second step is to set up our grid, and we always set up our grid with the number that we're given initially. So, in this case, that is this value right here, 2.00 marathons. So I'm going to go ahead and write that all the way on the left-hand side. 2.00 marathons, and that'll be the beginning of my grid. Now in the next box, we have to put in a unit that will allow us to cancel marathons, and it turns out that that unit is right here. So, if we do that, we know we have to put one marathon on the bottom, because the whole goal is to cancel out units. On the top, we put the other part of that conversion factor, and we know that a marathon is equal to 26.2 miles. That way, as you can see here, we cancel out marathons. And now, we're left with our units in miles. Unfortunately, we still have a ways to go because the question asks us about miles. Or rather, it asks us about centimeters. So we still have a few steps to take. Now, the next step should be one that allows you to cancel out miles. So, if I'm looking at this right, I think that's this step right here on the left. So if 1 mile equals 1.609 kilometers, that will allow us to cancel out miles in this next step. Miles on top, miles on the bottom, that cancels. So now our next step. Our next step needs to be one that cancels out kilometers. Now, if some of you are comfortable enough with this math to be able to combine these last 2 steps into one, that's fine, as long as you show me what you're doing. I would warn you against that because that's where a lot of people make mistakes when they try to skip steps. So, if I were you, and I still do this myself, I would write it all the way out. This is exactly how I would do the problem. and I've been at this a lot longer than you. So, there we have our next step. And as you can see, we have kilometers on the top and kilometers on the bottom, so that cancels. Now I'm going to go ahead and create some more space for us here, so we can write this all in one line, so it's easier to see, since we've already gone over these steps once. And we're going to do the final step, because now we have a unit that not only cancels out meters, but also gives us centimeters, which is what we wanted. So we're going to put 1 meter on the bottom. We're going to put 100 centimeters on top. And I believe, and let me just double check this, that we cancel out meters and we're left with centimeters. And sure enough, the question asks us about centimeters. So I'd say we've got everything set up pretty well. Now it's just a matter of crunching the numbers. So what you're going to get in your calculator when you do all these numbers out is a number that looks like this. It's going to be 8,431,160. I could be slightly wrong on that, but I believe that's about what you get in your calculator. Now, is that an answer that I'm going to accept, knowing what you know about precision and accuracy and significant figures? Absolutely not. That is not an answer I'm going to accept for full credit at any time. So, what you need to do is you need to round. And in this case, we need to round to 3 significant figures. All you have to do is always look at that first number. The first number in that process is the only one you ever need to look at. The ones in the middle, all of these steps here, they are considered to be definitions, and they have infinite sig figs, so you never have to look at those. The only number you look at is this first number here. So, since this has 3 sig figs, 2.00 marathons, our answer has to have 3 sig figs as well. So, we're looking at this number, and it's always a good idea to put it in scientific notation first. Now, when you put it in scientific notation, it's a lot easier to round where you need to round. I'm not really going to go through that step in a whole lot of detail because we've already done that. But I will tell you that the final answer that you want is 8.43 times 10 to the 6th centimeters. That's 8.5 million centimeters. That makes me sound really hardcore, which is the way I like it. So, that is another example of dimensional analysis. And you see, the same steps are true every time. You start out with some numbers. You figure out some conversion factors. Some of them are given. Some of them you'll have to figure out, but usually they're pretty common sense. Then you make a grid. You cancel out all the units that you don't want and make sure you have the unit that you do want. And you crunch all the numbers to get your final answer. Remember, anytime you have something on the top, you multiply. Anytime you have something on the bottom, you divide. Other than that, the other way to get good at this is practice. So take all the homework seriously, ask me questions in class, do what you got to do, because this stuff is pretty important for the rest of the year. Thanks for watching.